All right. Good afternoon, Ridge Runner Nation. What is up? Welcome back-to-back nights coming at you on Thursday after that Wednesday show that we had with Alex Gold. Welcome back to another Ridge Runners Live. Tonight, we are so super stoked to be joined by Samuel Hartman, Barkley Fall Classic finisher of the Cloudsplitter 100K, Burning River 100, Big Turtle 50 mile, Thunder Bunny 50K, Breaks Ultra 45 miler, and another one you might have heard of, the El Ultramarathon Caballo Blanco in Urique, Mexico. Sam, how is it going, man? This guy is a vegan, straight edge, CrossFit coaching road cyclist who also decided that none of that was enough to keep him fit and out there getting after it. So he decided to start running ultras, and he's got all those stout finishes I just listed under his belt. Samuel seems truly like a person who looked at life and asked if he could turn up the difficulty setting. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Sam to the podcast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Cam. Thanks for having me. And that's quite the intro when you put it that way. I just hope I can live up to the fame that you just bestowed upon me. So yeah, big fan of the show. Love the guests you guys have had on here. It's a real honor to be on the same podcast with all the first place finishers and all the amazing runners you've had on the show. So yeah, excited to be here.
Well, that's great to hear, Sam. For those of y'all who do not know, my name is Cam Wrench. I am the sixth man of Ridge Runner Nation. Here tonight hosting with John Dolovacki III, the better host. So let's get right into this, Sam. As some people probably know, a lot of people probably don't, you and I are co-workers at the Columbus Dublin REI. And I may have overheard at work one day that after World's End, you were potentially going to get a haircut. So, Sam, what's going on? Is the Columbus Dublin REI going to be down one more long-haired man? No more of getting us confused up at Frontline?
Yeah, that would be tragic. So I think the rumor that maybe, got a little bit of a telephone game thing, I told my wonderful girlfriend, Marissa, after Barkley Fall Classic, if I finished, that I would get my hair trimmed because it's quite unruly. As I'm sure you know, the guy with long hair, get the dead ends. And I don't really wash my hair very often. I do a lot of things kind of in a strange way, as you'll probably learn. And so she, I told her, I said, all right, if I finish this race, and she came to Tennessee with me and really supported me through that race, I'll go get my hair trimmed. I'll take care of it. And so that was the promise. Don't think I'm ready to cut it off yet. Thought about that, flirted with that idea. If I don't know, if I finish a loop at the Barkley Marathons one day, I'll cut my hair off. How about that? Yeah.
Y'all heard it here first.
Just one loop, man. All you need is one loop. I mean, you don't only need one, but I would be happy with one. Let's put it that way. Yeah, sure. So I started running kind of as an outcome of some other sports I was involved in. I was a cyclist for many years, as Cam mentioned. I was a road cyclist. I was doing this out of Louisville, Kentucky. So I was racing on a road cycling team, doing crits, road races, a couple time trials. Got flirted with mountain bike racing and things like that. And then got kind of sick of that, got kind of burnt out. Started running a little bit here and there, but it really took many years for me to really get serious about ultra running. I actually did my first ultra in 2013. I don't really talk about that time very much, not because it was a bad time. It was just something I had done, to really challenge myself, like Cam said, to kind of turn up the difficulty level. So I did a 50K up in Chicago. I think it's called the Lakeshore 50K. It's on crushed gravel, the whole thing. So not even really a trail race, kind of a hybrid trail road, and really just slogged my way through it. Probably was undertrained. And I was really into CrossFit at that time. Kept doing the CrossFit and the weightlifting thing. And, I can tell you more about that and the weightlifting club I started and being a CrossFit weightlifting coach. And then around 2017, so about 4 years after the first 50K, it was like, I really want to try that again. I really want to get serious about running. So I did my first trail 50K, the rough trail 50K, Red River Gorge. It's put on by Next Opportunity Events. And I love Mike and Brandy and the races they put on. So great. They did breaks not that long ago. And so big fan of them. And that was all I needed. I did my first trail 50K and I was like, oh man, this is it. Like being out here, suffering for 8.5 hours, at the time I thought that was like a long time. Little did I know that would be, not even like a third of some of the events that I would go on to do. And then, all through 2018 was looking for more and more races, looking for more 50Ks, eventually looking for 50 milers, and then working up to my first 100-mile finish, which was last summer at Burning River. And just made it. It was like 29 hours and 45 minutes or something. Certainly not fast 100, but I got it. I got that 100 belt buckle. It's up above me. And from there, I just wanted to keep pushing the envelope. I wanted more technical terrain. I wanted more climbing. So I looked at Cloudsplitter. It's 13,000 feet of climbing over the 100K. And so wanted to do that. And now, I've been really, really fortunate to have 5 races under my belt for 2020, which is pretty rare given COVID and everything, including one DNF recently, which we can talk about. And I just want to keep running and staying healthy and really trying to find, the most interesting races that I can. The 3 that I did this month, I think were really interesting in their own way. So I'm very glad I found this sport. It means a lot to me, and I could talk a lot about how it's changed my life in all the different ways.
All right, that's so great to hear, and we'll give you a second to catch your breath, collect your thoughts now. We just want to remind everybody that whether you've been with us from the very first live show with Michael Owen and all those dudes, to if this is your very first time tuning in, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so you get notifications every time we upload a new video. We've got some really great content planned. And also follow us on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It is at Ridge Runners with 1 N in runners. Maybe I couldn't find it originally because I was misspelling it all the time. Anyways, if you're listening afterward as well on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we also appreciate you. Make sure to leave us a review on those platforms because that'll help us out a lot. And as always, if you have any questions for our guests tonight, leave them in the live chat and we will try to ask Sam all of those things tonight. And then moving on, Sam, you just briefly mentioned that you had 3 races in this past month, and they're 3 of some of the most difficult non-100-mile ultras this side of those big mountains out west that I'm always talking about. How did that sort of come about, and why did you decide to stay in all of those races so close to each other?
Well, I think the short answer is COVID, right? I had planned a really big year. I think my first race was a 30K Rocks and Roots Trail Series. I'm sure you guys know that one. Yep. Then I was tapering down for the Caballo Blanco race, which was an absolutely incredible experience that I'm looking at the poster of it on my wall right now. And they're running it in 2021, as far as I know. And even if it waits a year, I encourage anybody who wants to go to Mexico to run an ultramarathon to do that one, especially if you're born to run. So that was on my list. And then I was planning on doing the Hellbender 100 in Asheville, North Carolina, who I believe was designed by Brandon Thrower. Is that one of your previous guests? Am I getting the name? Am I getting the name right?
I would say that would be a Wesley question.
Yeah, that would be
okay.
Neither of us were on that week.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well,
we'll figure it out later.
I did try to study the show, and yeah, I think there's been some North Carolina influence in previous episodes, and honestly, I think the thing that this has been a great month for me, but I had really big plans this year. I was supposed to go to Europe. I was going to race one of the UTMB races, TDS. It's the very technical 90-mile race. I had all kinds of stuff planned, and everything got canceled. As all the runners out there know, we just basically lost all our races, and a lot of hard decisions from runners and race directors and just people all over the world. And so, I'd signed up for breaks a long time ago, thinking after this whole massive summer of racing, okay, well, maybe I'll do breaks, as just, one final hurrah or whatever. I'd put myself on the Barkley Fall Classic waiting list. I actually emailed Laz about that, never thinking I would get in. They let 125 people in this year, and I still can't believe I was one of them. And then, I signed up for the World's End Ultramarathon probably before all of that, thinking, well, I'm not even sure if I can finish this race, 19 hours for 100K over technical terrain, 13,000 feet of climbing. And now that I've done the race, I can tell you the technical terrain was no joke. It was just one section of rocks after another for, 50, 60 miles. And I thought that one, if not all of these races would either get canceled, get postponed. I definitely didn't think that I would do breaks and World's End and get into Barkley Fall Classic all together. But that's what happened. And I'm amazed that it did. And I'm amazed that I, ended up doing all three of them, sadly with the DNF at World's End, but, still showed up and gave it my best shot and got a 50-miler out of it. So, it really was just COVID kind of pushed everything to this month. And I didn't think that I would end up doing all three races. But fortune or fate or, the universe was on my side, and that's what happened. I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Sam. And so once this all sort of materialized together and you knew that, you would have this month-long period where, you'd not only be traveling to these races, but running these really incredibly challenging races, did your plans change at all for them? What was your mindset going into Barkley Fall Classic, knowing that you have World's End still on the list, right? Take us through what you were thinking about all of that.
Yeah, I mean, they were all very different races, right? So Breaks 45 miler was a race that had a very generous cutoff. I think it was 16 hours. I knew the race director, Mike, and I know the company, Next Opportunity Events, had some friends down there that were doing it, had researched it, and felt pretty comfortable during that race. It did have some hamstring issues later on that kind of slowed me down. And man, at Breaks, the last 2 miles is just this monster climb, and it's technical, and it was just very, very difficult. But even with all that, I think my time was a little over 14 hours or something. So, I was well within the time cap, felt confident, made good use of the trekking poles, all that stuff. Going into Barkley Fall Classic, I knew that I just needed to be consistent in moving. I knew that dehydration could be an issue, which it ended up being a very serious issue, and I actually cramped quite a bit. And so my mindset going into Barkley Fall Classic was just don't stop moving. You see all these pictures of Rat Jaw and hear the stories about people just, laying down on the side of the trail. And I mean, there were definitely times climbing up Rat Jaw that I did stop and catch my breath. But, I tried to keep moving. And I think half the time I was just so amazed that I was actually doing that climb. I mean, I was on this famous climb, called Rat Jaw that, I've seen in the documentary that everybody talks about. That is the climb that, not only Barkley Fall Classic, but Barkley Marathons itself. It's one of the defining climbs of Frozen Head State Park. And so, by the time I got up Rat Jaw, and now everybody kind of knows this, the second time. So there are 2 Rat Jaws in this year's BFC. I knew I was going to make it. I knew I had about 8 miles left, and they were very long, tedious 8 miles, but I knew I was going to make it. I knew I could walk it and make it. And so, I just was consistent and just kept moving and really tried to get it done. And then I kind of had some decisions to make. I was like, all right, well, I have 1 race left. I've had some injuries that have, kind of lingered, but they're not debilitating, but they're just annoying. And, I had to decide to go out to World's End, which is 6.5 hour drive. So it was the longest race away. I was taking my friend Max, who Cam works with us at REI, to support me. And I was like, am I going to, bring a friend? 6.5 hours into the wilderness of Pennsylvania, do a whole campsite, do this whole thing just to potentially DNF. And that's what happened. But we had a really amazing experience out of it anyway. I had really good prep. We had great aid station transitions. I didn't blister at all. I got the hydration so much better. I had good clothing and gear choices. Max was amazing and such an awesome crew person and just did everything right for me all day. And, I increased my fitness. I mean, all of these runs at the end of the day, whether they're races or training runs, we're just trying to get fitter. At least for me, like I'm always thinking to the future. Like I definitely am proud of what I've did, but I do these things so that I can do bigger and bigger things. And so, next year I can go back and hit that 100K in 18 hours, 17 hours, and then, do a 100 miler, and then one day do a 200 miler. And, I want to do, the biggest, hardest races possible. So I knew that if I skipped World's End just because I wouldn't finish, or that it was, unlikely that I would finish, I'd be missing out on that big training opportunity. And that opportunity to, spend time with a friend and see the course and see how amazing that race was. And so I'm really glad that I got to do that. It was a really, September has just been an incredible month for ultra running for me. Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's very well put. And so you mentioned that between breaks, Barkley Fall Classic and World's End, they're all very bases, despite all being sort of like categorized as difficult. What would you say is was the most physical challenging moment in each one of those races? And then what was the most mentally challenging moment, if it was different from the most physically challenging moment?
Yeah. So for breaks, which is held probably people might know it as the Pine Mountain region or the Breaks Interstate Park on the border of Kentucky and Virginia, probably the most difficult part was the final climb. I actually tried to put some of these trails on Trail Run Project because there was nothing on there. And, we mapped all the stuff with the GPS data because we ran it. So this climb had, one of the sections was like, 700 feet of gain over like 0.7 miles or something. I mean, just like stupid steep. And, it was scree, it was loose rock. It was dark by that point. And, I knew I would finish, but you have that moment in an ultra marathon where you're like, I'm so impatient. You just want to get to the next part of the race, And I knew that once I finished that climb, that I would be back in the park on the road and I could just run it in. But that climb just seemed to take forever, it's 30-minute mile or whatever. And it just, even though that was like, a very small part of the race, I would say that was probably the most challenging for me physically and mentally. As far as Barkley, the last 8 miles was very difficult for me mentally because it just drug on forever. So at this race, Barkley Fall Classic, you can't have a GPS watch. There's no phones, no GPS watch. I mean, you could have music, I guess, if you had an iPod, no trekking poles. There were no aid stations except for water. Really kind of Spartan, just difficult type race. And those last 8 miles, boy, they just drug on forever. And we still, we lost 2,000 feet, gained 1,000 feet in those last 8 miles. And just all over the place. You go right through the south end of the park. The trails weren't technical, but it just took forever. And again, I'm just sort of waiting and waiting and waiting to get back to the park roads, to finish the race. So it just kind of drug on. As far as the most physically challenging part of Barkley Fall Classic, there's another famous climb or descent called Testicle Spectacle. I just put some photos of that up on my Instagram. And boy, when I first saw that, I got scared a little bit. It was so steep. You literally had to slide down either like on your butt or you had to put your feet on the ground and sort of if any of the climbers listening will know the move stemming, where you push your arms out like this to stem your way up. So I had to stem to prevent myself from falling down this slope. That's how steep it was on Testicle Spectacle. And there were, multiple sections of this as I'm going down. And so, this is the first time I'd ever done this race and been on this climb, because you're not allowed to go on these sections of the park, except during a race, except either Barkley Fall Classic or Barkley Marathons. So I saw this descent and how steep and technical, and just loose rock and dirt everywhere. And I was like, shit, like I got to do this. Like I have to get down this if I want to finish the race. And I did, and I made it happen. And then going up, I didn't think was as bad, because you're going up. So, when you're going up a steep climb, you can always just sort of fall into the hill. But if you're going down and you fall, well, now you're tumbling, and now you're really going to get hurt. So in some ways, I find descents scarier than ascents. As far as World's End, the challenge was just all the technical terrain throughout the race. We had huge boulder fields we had to climb up. I mean, some of these trails, it's just a collection of rocks. I mean, you guys have probably been on stuff like that, where you're like, this is a trail? Like, this is just a collection of rocks that somebody put a blaze on, It's not really a trail at all. But we had to climb stuff like that, at 5:30 in the morning. I mean, this was like mile 3 of the race or something. And then mentally towards the end of the race, when I knew I wasn't going to make that 50-mile cutoff. 50-mile cutoff was 9 p.m. Ended up getting there about 9:10. Walking towards that, I was just like, man, like, you just start playing through all those things in your head. If only I'd done this. If only I'd done that. If only I was a little bit faster here. If I'd shaved off 5 minutes here and 10 minutes here, I would have made it in the cutoff. And I knew the reality was, I would have needed probably an extra hour to finish that race. But I really wanted to try to do that. And, it just didn't happen. That's okay, because I got a good training thing out of it. Yeah. If I can just mention real quick, I feel like there's a segment on what are you drinking on this show, and we haven't touched that yet.
We do have a what are you drinking segment. Would you like to tell us what you're drinking?
Well, as a matter of fact, I would. So I don't drink, which maybe is why you guys very sweetly didn't ask me. But I prepared some drinks, some non-alcoholic drinks, just for the show. So I'm starting with a Waterloo sparkling water, coconut flavor. I dedicate this coconut flavored bubbly to my girlfriend, Marissa. I then have a drink that she got me, Trader Joe's spiced ginger brew. So that's very lovely, very nice bottle. And then, I love to stay hydrated. So I'm going to finish this off with some Liquid Death. And if you see right here, it says murder your thirst. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to murder my thirst with some Liquid Death.
Can you elaborate more on what Liquid Death is?
It's water? It's just water, actually. Mountain water, Liquid Death mountain water. You can get it at Whole Foods or other fine establishments, I guess. I don't know. I'll be honest, I bought it because of the name. And it was not worth the price tag. But it's called Liquid Death. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you got to keep at least one of those in the fridge at all times.
Like, exactly. In case you're really thirsty. Yeah, what are you guys drinking?
I am drinking first a Southern Tier 8 days of the week, and infinitely drinkable is what it says on it. And then I've got a secondary beverage as well. And I have the New Juice IPA Indian Pale Ale. We'll see if we get into that one. What do you got over there, Cam?
All right. So once again, I have a Jackie O's. If y'all are noticing a trend in my beverage choices, it should be pretty obvious by now. But it's the Under a Cloud IPA. I truly do love the can art on this one. I cannot say enough about this little possum holding the umbrella in her little tail there. It felt really fitting with the weather today in Columbus, kind of moody, kind of rainy. And you'll note I don't have a second or third beverage like John and Sam do. And that's because usually I have to pee really badly by the end of these. And I don't want to have to get up and leave during the show.
I feel that. A lot of IPAs on this show, I've noticed. I've never had one, but it seems to be a theme.
Except Wesley.
Ah.
Yeah, the Tall Boy White Claw was a
yes, that was
choice last night.
That was in the Alex Gold episode. Yeah. Another incredible Ohio runner. Yes.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
It looks like from the chat, looks like Marissa's in the chat. She says no gross in all caps to your coconut water.
Yeah, she hates coconut bubbly, but it's my favorite. I mean, the way the coconut hits the seltzer water, it's amazing. I don't drink them during races because I want calories, so I just do Coke or, whatever I can find that's carbonated that has like a ton of calories in it. Man, there's nothing better after an ultra though than a cold LaCroix. I have Waterloo because that's what I bought, but I like LaCroix. I like pretty much all of them.
Nice.
Big fan.
So
when you're drinking the seltzer waters, you find that you actually taste the flavor of the coconut and not just kind of like spicy water.
Well, I mean, right. It's a slight misnomer. I guess you're not really tasting anything. And if you hold if you hold your nose and you drink LaCroix, you're basically just drinking water. So the nasal, the olfactory perspective of the water, that's what's important. Yeah, I mean, I love coconut. Coconut's amazing. Foods and coconut oil as a moisturizer, it's incredible.
Well, speaking of things that our guests really love, if you listen to last night's show, you learned that Alex Gold truly does love White Claws. Samuel Hartman, you wouldn't run a beer mile or a White Claw mile, and that's okay. But give us an estimate. What do you think you could run for the Coconut Waterloo Mile? Same rules apply.
Well, okay, so this is where, I'm going to look like a fool on the podcast here. I don't really know how a beer mile works.
Oh my gosh! So
yeah, so you
standard
got to
race,
explain it to
right?
me. Yeah.
4 laps on the track.
Okay.
In the what is it? The baton train, right? So it's like 20 yards there on the track. Can you tell I threw shot put in high school? I don't know what the thing's called. You have to drink a beer. You can't shotgun it. You can't like do anything else. You can't like go to the top of the lid. You can't drink with a straw, I'm pretty sure. And it also has to be above 5%. So no like super light beers. And then you just do that 4 times. So 4 beers, 4 laps. That's your beer mile. So you would be 4 Waterloos, 4 laps.
So I'm drinking one of these each 400 meters.
Essentially.
And you want to know what my time would be?
Yeah, let's throw down a prediction.
Oh my God. I don't know, man. Probably be like a 10-minute mile or something. I mean, I think I would throw up. I can't imagine doing it with beer. I'd definitely throw up if it was beer. And not even just because I don't drink. It just sounds ludicrous.
It's a lot to deal with.
I would just sloshing around in the belly.
Yeah.
I would stab myself in the face. The can's got all these like sharp pointy things here. Like I would hurt myself. Yeah.
Beer would suck, but you know what is even worse? Chocolate milk. So if you go back a couple of years, not even a couple of years, you can watch Wesley and Michael Owen do a chocolate milk challenge where they run up a 250-foot hill, or I think it's about 250 feet-ish in that range, half mile up, get to the top, chug chocolate milk, run back down to the bottom, chug chocolate milk, run back to the top, chug chocolate milk. That's worse. I think by far.
I mean, I like the hill component. Yeah, if I was going to do some kind of beer mile thing, I would want it to be a climb. So here's what I would do. A pizza climb. 2,000 feet of gain, an entire extra large pizza. That sounds like my kind of challenge.
I think we got the next challenge lined up. We got to film this one.
Truly.
I'm coming to Columbus. Where can we find a good hill?
Because it's got to be a lot of gain and a big pizza. That would be awesome. Yeah.
I'll tell you where you can find a 2,000-foot hill in Columbus, and the answer is nowhere.
Yeah. Well, you go to Sugarloaf, the Great Seal, you do it 4 times. And each time you eat a fourth of the pizza. There you go.
We're onto something here.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know what y'all are doing this Saturday, but I may have new plans.
Let's turn this into an organized event, and it can be sponsored by Ridge Runners.
See if we can get some pizza donations too.
Yeah.
I think we've come up with something here. We're definitely going to have to do this.
All right. The pizza climb. Dig it.
Wesley's not in on the ZA challenge apparently, though. Well, I don't know why.
He says, I'm out on a ZA challenge. And for somebody who is in on a chocolate milk challenge, I do not understand. But we also do have a serious question from the chat that I want to get to. Eric Anderson, we have not been ignoring you. We've just been trying to go with the flow of things. But he would like to know what the difference in the mental pressure is of a tough cutoff like a race at World's End or a generous cutoff like at Cloudsplitter.
Yeah, well, that's a great example. So Cloudsplitter, for people who don't know, they're doing the same thing this year too. There's a 25K, 50K, 100K, and 100-mile distance. And they all start at the same time, although this year they're doing wave starts, but it's about the same time. And they all have the same cutoff, which is 40 hours. Even for 100 miles, even over technical terrain, 40 hours is a pretty generous cutoff. So, especially for the people out there for the 25 and the 50K, you literally could walk the whole thing and complete it. No problem. Same with the 100K. The 100K Cloudsplitter took me like 23 hours. I mean, a lot of climbing. Like I said, 13,000 feet, something crazy like that. And some real technical terrain in the middle, some water crossings, stuff like that. To the question, I think there definitely was more stress and more angst, in my head going into World's End. But, I couldn't let it get to me in those first few miles. It's very easy to look at your watch, at mile 10 of 100K or mile 20 or whatever and say, all right, well, I'm clocking a 18-minute mile right now. Like, that's too slow. I need to speed up. And you just get stressed about it. And I didn't want to run that kind of race. I didn't want to run a race where I was stressed the whole time. I wanted to enjoy it. The landscape was gorgeous. I was there with my buddy Max. I wanted to really, enjoy all the work I'd put in to get to that race. So I think if anything, there's an element of stress at a race like Cloudsplitter because that you can be out there forever. Like, I could have taken 30 hours to do that 100K at Cloudsplitter. Whereas at World's End, it's more like you just got to go. Like, you just got to go at the best possible pace that you can and hope that you make the cutoffs. And if you don't, you don't, and you go and you train and you try again, and that's all you can do. But they're still, they're both great races in their own right.
Wonderful answer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And so we always like to hit on the difficult parts of these races, but one thing that I've also been trying to do is to always temper every time I talk about how hard ultras are by talking about how much joy I get from them. So, Sam, I asked you what the hardest parts of each of these races are. What parts of each of these races brought you the most joy? And don't say carpool karaoke with Max, because we can't let him know that you had a lot of fun doing that.
No, we certainly can't, as we karaoke to the Faceless and Between the Buried and Me. Well, so for breaks, there was a real good portion, probably miles like 20 to 30, where I was just cruising. I even bombed a couple downhills. I just felt great, and just remembered what it felt like to be an ultra runner again. That was my first race since March, since Caballo Blanco, and it really was a lot of fun. And then there was a spot where my hamstring was really hurting, and I was walking, and I still had about 10 miles left of the race, and I just sort of told myself, like, there's nothing I can do about this right now, so I might as well just accept it and just keep moving on. And I thought about David Goggins. I'm a big fan of David Goggins. I'm sure it's not a stranger to people who run ultras, and all the crazy stuff he's done on broken limbs and everything else, and thought, man, my hamstring just hurts. That's all it is. And I'm going to get home and I'm going to stretch and I'm going to do rehab and I'm going to go see my PT, but I can't do any of those things right now. Like, all I wanted to do was fix the issue, but you can't really fix a bigger issue in the middle of an ultra. You can just kind of take one step forward and then another and another, and eventually you add all the steps up and you get to whatever distance it is you want to get to. And so I had a moment of joy even when I was in, like, not excruciating pain, but a lot of pain. Like, I couldn't run because my leg hurt so bad because of a chronic injury I've had this year. I would say the joy from the Barkley Fall Classic, probably Rat Jaw the second time. I actually did it faster. A lot of people did. And I was like, man, this is amazing. Like, I am ascending Rat Jaw right now. I'm actually doing this. This is stuff that, like, You know, I mean, it's silly, but it's like, this is what they do in the big Barkley, right? Like, this is the same climb. And the Briars are worse because they run that race in like April, and this is in September. So just doing that climb was just amazing. And at World's End, you know, a lot of those technical sections early on in the race were a lot of fun. It's really fun to do super technical stuff on fresh legs. It's not super fun to do technical stuff on really tired legs. But you know, when you're fresh and you're you know, almost skipping over the boulders, that's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that. And when I put some good music on, I listen to a lot of music. Actually, towards the end of the race, I was really, really fatigued, and I needed something to kind of keep me going. So I put on my podcast app, and I listened to Ridge Runner. I listened to the one with the Table Rock winners, the two women, Sophie and Reagan.
Yeah, that was a great episode.
Yeah, it was an awesome episode, you know? And yeah, I listened to that during World's End out of my phone. I couldn't bear to have anything in my ears anymore. You know, I'd had my headphones in for like 8 hours at that point. I was like, I just ripped them out. I was like, I cannot do this. And then, you know, by mile 45, it's dark. I'm in the forest. There's nobody around. Kind of freaked out. You know, you're clocking a 19-minute mile. And so I was like, I'm going to put a podcast on, you know, that's podcast going to keep me company. So the Ridge Runners kept me company while I was on trail. It was awesome.
Well, we love to hear that. Wesley, our faster host, is sitting in the chat room this evening and had a good question. He said, you kind of hinted at the fact that you're interested in the Barkley Marathon 100, and like what mental and physical preparations would you have to go through before attempting that kind of challenge?
Well, the first answer that comes to mind is stupidity. I'd have to be stupid to enter that race. You know, the Barkley Marathons is a fantasy for, and I use that word in every possible meaning, for a lot of ultra runners. You watch the documentary. I'm no exception. I watched the documentary. And you go, wow, that's amazing. I would love to do that one day. And the Barkley Fall Classic was the first step in that. Will I ever make it to the Barkley Marathons? I don't know. I mean, the chances of me being fit enough in my lifetime to finish a race like that, you know, you look at the type of runner that Gary Robbins or John Kelly is, and there's another finisher, Nicodemus De La Rosa, who I can talk about, who's a friend of mine. You look at the shape they were in and the mental space they were in to finish a race like that. And there's enough documentaries now that you can see this stuff, you know, or you can go read their race reports. It's something special. It's a very, very narrow place. And what I mean by that is you have to have your focus set so narrow that basically everything else in your life is secondary to finishing that race. And I don't think most people realize, I don't even think I would realize what that would do to the rest of your life, to your relationships, to your time, to your job, to your paycheck or income. I mean, I would go as far as to say, and if there are any people who, you know, are more obsessed with the Barkley than me or know more about it, you know, please comment. But I would say you would have to be obsessed with that race to feel like you could finish, or even to complete a fun run. You know, a goal for me would just to be to get in and do a lap. And even just saying that, I know that, like, well, that's not really the point. The point's not to get in. The point's to finish. You know, we don't enter ultras to DNF. So there's a very sort of tenuous relationship that I have with the race already. But I feel like I'm young in my ultra running career. I've only started really seriously running about 3 years ago. And, you know, I'm only 35. So, you know, I hope at some point in my life I can get into that race and do well. But, you know, that might be 3 years. That might be 10 years. I don't know.
Well, you say that now. The ultra running peak age seems to be all over the place, and it truly seems to be a lot later than 35, to be frank. And I mean, even for most athletics, it's definitely changing. Tom Brady's still out there. um, to reference another sport. But
Yeah. I ran with Carl
that
Meltzer at Cloudsplitter, man. I mean, you all know that guy. I talked to him. I saw him on trail. The dude is a beast. And in his mid 50s at this point, I think. I mean, just
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah. So
His
yeah,
experience.
if I have years left in me to run fast on trails, like I'm gonna do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that said, we have another question from Marissa in the chat. Don't worry, this one is not about your beverage choices tonight, but it is, what's the best thing you've ever found on a trail while running?
I actually found a pair of really nice Oakley sunglasses at the Red River Gorge. I think it got to be like $150 sunglasses, and I just found them on the trail, picked them up, put them right on. So I just started wearing them immediately. Yeah, I mean, that's like the best like thing I can think of. I suppose I could give some kind of esoteric answer like, oh, I found my sanity or whatever, but I didn't. That's not true. You kind of go insane when you run this long and you just want it to be over. That's all you can think. It's God's taking forever. I always say ultra running takes forever. I mean, it really does.
Yep.
It's like just when you think you can't be out there for any more hours, you still have like 6 hours left. It takes forever.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, how many people think about, how many people who haven't run an ultra who hit you with that classic line of, well, I don't even like to drive that far. How many of them have stayed up for 26, 27, 28, 29 hours straight, much less not running, just staying awake,
Right.
Even like binge watching Netflix, just being conscious for that period of time is difficult.
It is. Yeah. Not to mention moving for that long. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. And so moving forward a little bit. So you mentioned earlier the hamstring issue that you were having and knowing you're like, well, I can handle this after the fact, right? But like now I can't fix it, right? What has your recovery been like? Were there any like particular special habits that you had between the races that you knew like this is going to get me right by Saturday? Anything you're doing now that we should make note of?
Yeah. Well, I'll give a shout out to my PT for people who are in Columbus. His name is Matt Longfellow. He has a practice called Diverge Performance Therapy. And he's been great. I mean, I started seeing him when I was a weightlifter, and he has a real focus on breathing. I know that's kind of like a buzzword right now, but, we worked a lot on, people call it, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing. But one of the issues I have from years of just life, but especially lifting and CrossFit is, a certain sort of pelvic tilt. And, for the people in the house who are PTs or have studied physical therapy or know, when your pelvis is sort of out of alignment in one way or the other chronically, it can create issues throughout the rest of your body. And it can also create issues with airflow. So when you try to take air into your diaphragm, if your core isn't stacked correctly on top of your pelvis, then you're going to have to overextend or underextend to get the air in all the right places. Your body's going to do that one way or another, right? You got to breathe. Like your body's not going to be like, well, I'll cut back on breathing so you can be in a good position. No, your body will put you in a bad position so you can breathe. And so that's where a lot of these issues come from. And so there's a lot of corrective breathing and stretching drills that he's had me do that I, wasn't all that good about staying up on, because I was like, well, it's bad, but it's not that bad. And so I really was diligent about that in the last few weeks. And I think it's helped. The last 2 races, I had much less issues, and I'm continuing to really try to work on my posture and alignment. I go back and forth on running form because I don't want people to think that there's a buy-in with running. I think people who want to get into running should just go find a pair of shoes that aren't abysmal, put them on, and go run. You don't need to overthink it. Just lean forward, start running. Running is just controlled falling. That's all it is. And now that I'm several years into my running career, I am going back and looking at the running form and the gait and my cadence. But sometimes I think like, man, this is just crazy. Like I should just be able to run. But if you learn a bad habit, if your body learns a bad habit, you got to unlearn that habit over time. Friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, Douglas, a long time ago, told me this phrase: practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So if you practice something the wrong way or in a less than ideal way over and over and over and over again, it becomes permanent in your body until you change the process of, then you unlearn that behavior. That could be a mental behavior or a physical behavior. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to learn that, really trying to unlearn the behavior of having this like extended torso all the time, and really trying to get in a better postural position, trying to breathe better. And then on top of that, all the stuff you'd expect: sleep, food. So I've been vegan for a long time. And, that movie Game Changers really talks about how plant-based diet can aid recovery. I'm not totally sure if that's true for me. I've been ethical vegan for much longer than that, but it probably doesn't hurt. And in some way, I think it does help that I'm not eating things like dairy or meat, which can be hard to process in the body, not to mention cruel. And then just a couple things real quick. I like cryotherapy. I go to Ohio Cryo here in Columbus. If you never tried cryotherapy, it's awesome. You get in a big tube and they blast like negative 200-degree liquid nitrogen in for 3 minutes. It's amazing. Massage, stretching, easy recovery stuff like walks and runs. And then I do some recovery lifting too. So I'll do light squats, lunges, kettlebell swings, stuff like that, just to kind of move. I think movement is the key, right? Like you got to move. So I try to move as much as possible between these races, but without creating like additional stress or additional inflammation in my body.
Yeah, really, really well put. And I really, I know that wasn't your phrase, but I really like that that line of thinking, right? Practice doesn't make perfect, but practice makes permanent. Especially now as I begin seeing the PT myself, and she makes many comments on how my right leg is very different from my left leg, and I've got just the weakest glutes in the world.
You need to do some lunges, man. Lots and lots of lunges once that foot's good enough to do them. That's the key.
Trust me, they've been prescribed and on my leg only so far. So we'll see if it catches back up, or what the deal with that is. But moving on, we're going to move to some shorter, faster questions here at the end of the show, like we always do.
Great.
If you have any, ask Sam, please just let us know in the chat. First question here is, Sam, if you wrote a memoir, what would it be called?
Yeah, so I've thought about this a lot. So the memoir would be called Running from My Problems. And the subtitle would be something to the effect of how I ran 100 miles and it didn't change my life. I think it's catchy. I think it's funny. But I think it's so interesting. I love ultra running. I love the sport. And I hope to do this for a long time. And I think it is transformative, but it doesn't always change your life in the ways that you think it will. And, one thing I think that should be talked about more, and, that I might talk about in a book like this, is like, what happens after the race? Like, even if you win, even if you smash the competition, you take your shoes and socks off, you take a shower, you go home, you go to the hotel, you go to the campsite, you go to sleep, and then you wake up the next day. Then what? Where does all that adrenaline and drive and passion go? And I think that we need, I think this is a conversation about mental health, but I think it's just more about like, ultra running is this amazing thing, but like you can't just run one ultra after another, after another, after another. I mean, most people can't. Now, there was that guy last year that tried to do 100 every weekend, Billy, the 100-mile slayer. That was crazy. Maybe he's an exception. But, most people, like, ultra running is this high. It's a peak in their life. And then I think it can create valleys sometimes too. And I think that we should talk more about those valleys to kind of bring them up a little bit. To kind of make people feel like, hey, it's okay to be like down after a race, even if you won. Like I guess I don't hear a lot of people say that, but I have to imagine that there are people who win ultras and still feel down later because the race is over and you just go home, you know? So that was a
Yeah.
long answer, but my thoughts.
It was, and it was really well put. And if you ever do want to get serious about that memoir thing, I have some people at the Ohio State English Department I could introduce you to. I hear
Cool.
their MFA program is fully funded for 3 years.
Awesome. Cool.
That's exactly as much of an endorsement as I'll give any English program or academia in general at this point in my life.
Hey, I'm very pro literature, man. I mean, hell yeah, read and write. It's absolutely all about it.
But yeah, so sorry for laughing there.
Okay.
We got another question from the chat. It's from the co-host who couldn't be here, the Pat McAfee of Ultra Running, Wesley Hartman. Dude, aren't you supposed to be at work or something? And he asks, what advice would you give to a runner who has been running ultras but wants to challenge themselves in a new way, like a huge vert race?
What was the last part?
What advice would you give to a runner who has been running ultras but wants to challenge themselves in a new way, like a race with huge vert?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different types of ultras now. You have, for example, Rocks and Roots here in Columbus, which is an extremely flat 50K. But the trail, can be very muddy and kind of gnarly, and it really slows people down. And then you have races like Cloudsplitter that are just, crazy vert and technical, and World's End was a perfect example of that. And World's End was even more technical than Cloudsplitter, absolutely. And then off in this other category, races like, Barkley Fall Classic, which I don't know if there's a lot of races like that. There's not a lot of climbs where you're on all fours in ultramarathons. So that's pretty special. But, what to do to, I mean, that's a hard question to answer. Ultras are challenging already. I mean, you can always up the distance, you can up the time. That backyard format's very popular now. I've thought about it. I know, Cam, you've done the backyard format, right?
I have, yeah.
How far did you get in that?
I ran 50, and then the last 4 miles I timed out. So I came in like 61 or 62 minutes. I got to see everybody's headlamps go up the hill there in Reese's backyard before I could get back in. But that was also only my second ultra. I'm actually really proud with the performance that I had that
50
day.
miles. Yeah, that's awesome. So I think that's an interesting format. Timed races are something to look at. I mean, I think vert challenges and, vert things are great. I mean, I've yet, to get out to Colorado and, all those places and really do the big climbs. All the stuff I've done has been, Appalachia and under. So I'm really looking forward to running at altitude and trying that out and seeing what it's like breathing at 12,000 feet and stuff like that. But I think just, ultra running, when it really comes down to it, is just about time. It doesn't matter the distance. If, being out somewhere for 6 hours is very different than being out somewhere for 12 hours. That's very different than being out somewhere for 24 or 28 or 30 hours. So, if you've done a race that took you 8 hours, go find a race that's going to take you 20 hours or 25 or 30. And that's the challenge, is can you withstand the mental pressure of your mind telling you, I just can't take another minute of this. That's kind of the narrative, right, that ultra runners go through. You just got to push past that and be like, yeah, actually I can. You're just walking, you're just running. That's all it is. And you can kind of go on forever with that attitude. And that's the challenge, is just to see how far you can go. And we say it's far, like distance, but it's really how long can you suffer based on hours, minutes, and seconds. I think that's the real challenge.
Interesting. I'm kind of curious. If you think of, I think throughout this entire podcast so far, we've hit it a couple times, but not truly hit it on the nail. And I'm curious, what you have very interested in, some of these really hard races and stuff like that. and kind of like maybe what's your why? What's that motivation that drives the desire to do some of these, harder races, and especially, what drove you to go through these like last 3 or 4 weeks of really tough races?
Well, I think, at first glance at that question, when I commit to something, I typically do it. I'm somebody who, I live by my word. Integrity is a big deal in my life. And so, I signed up for these races and I paid money for them. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to do it. Like, even if I'm slightly injured or whatever, even if they're 6 hours away, like I'm going to go and do them. But I think the real reason that I do ultra marathons, it's hard to distill down into one reason. And I'm sure people who know me might have other answers, but there's a feeling that comes often at the end of some of the really difficult races where virtually everything else in your life that you're thinking about, or you're worried about, or that you're excited about, it all fades away. And you know how, like, when you're anxious about something, like, let's say you have an appointment or something in the afternoon and it's the morning and you just can't stop thinking about it, and you try to distract yourself. And then like 5 minutes later, you start thinking about it again. Or if, you're in a fight with a friend or something, and you can't stop thinking about, oh, this person's mad at me, and it just keeps coming back and back. Even if you try to get away from it, like when you're in an ultra marathon, that doesn't happen. All your brain can focus on is the suffering that you're just enmeshed in. You're completely swallowed up by this doesn't sound like a good sales pitch for ultra running, but you're swallowed up by this agony, right? I mean, doesn't that sound awesome? Doesn't that make you guys want to go run ultras? You're swallowed up by agony. But that's all that's in your mind. And that's a beautiful thing, to have a single focus for once, right? I mean, all we do is distract ourselves with people and friends and food and social media and jobs and commutes and lawn work and, all this dumb shit that's in our life. And all that goes away in an ultra marathon. And so I do it because, like, after 12 hours, you really can only focus on one thing. And that one thing may be, wow, I'm chafing really bad, or it's 2 miles to the aid station, or I'm hungry, or I have to pee, or whatever. But that's it. It's like this solo one-track mind. It's truly a one-track mind. And you basically get that as long as you want until the race ends. And sometimes you even get it after the race ends for a while. And you're just like, whoa, that was crazy. I can't believe I did that. And that's why I said, when the race ends, it's so difficult afterwards. And I think people should talk about, what happens after the race ends, because then all that real life floods back in. But during the race, man, like, it's agony, but it's like bliss at the same time, because nothing else really matters except for what you're doing in that moment. It lets you be it's a way of being present that's almost guaranteed to bring you into the present if you go run a long enough distance.
I think it's one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of being out on a long run.
Thanks.
And especially like you're talking about, like that single focus of basically primal stuff almost. You're not sitting there with your phone scrolling through, like, oh, looking at this or comparing yourself to this or that. You're just focused on that immediate whatever's in front of your face kind of thing.
Right. And all you have to do that is, like, pay $100, drive somewhere, and pin a bib on. I mean, that's it. They tell you where to go. They mark the course. They give you water and food. You got music on your phone. What else do you need? They set the whole thing up for you. And then you just go and suffer for hours and hours and hours. And it's all you can think about. I mean, it's amazing. Like, it's such an amazing sport,
I always love, like, right in the middle or near, like, the 3/4 mark, when everyone's like, I'm never doing this again, or like mad at themselves. And then as soon as they cross the finish line, they're like, it's So I was thinking about signing up for.
Yeah. Yeah. They're on ultra sign up like that night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking for races. Ah, it was me this week. Yeah. Already looking for the next one. Yeah.
All right. That was a truly great answer, Samuel. I thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
And it's a much better way of describing ultras than usually what I tell people, which is just like, oh, it's just like fancy hiking, like between snack tables, you know? It's just like, I like the woods and I like to eat candy, right? Like it's just both things at once.
Well, those things are true too. And I mean, yes, I always say if you like eating, get into ultra running because you get to eat a lot. You can
You
basically
don't
eat
just
whatever.
get to eat a lot in the woods. You get to eat a lot in your daily life.
Yeah. Right.
If some people were surprised by your eat a whole extra large pizza comment, I just want to quote Coach David Roach and say, every pizza is a personal pizza if you believe in yourself.
I love it. I love that quote. That's awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are running a little over on time, but we don't want to let Samuel go just yet. We still got a couple more questions to ask him.
All right.
And so we're trying to get through these ones a little quicker.
I'll be brief.
And let's start with, if ultra running had walk-up songs like baseball, what would yours be?
Okay. So yeah, I'm going to test the metal and hardcore knowledge of the listeners here. But first one is black metal band from Norway called Dimmu Borgir. The song is Perfection or Vanity. Might have to type that into Spotify. It's the closing track on one of their records. Super epic heavy metal song. Just awesome. And the other one, I got to be true to my hardcore roots, is Hatebreed. If you've never run to Hatebreed, you're missing out, man. It'll get you pumped. And the song is called Before Dishonor from one of their records from the 90s. Just really super aggressive tune. Boy, anybody would look like a badass walking out to Hatebreed. So that's it.
Well, I'm excited to listen to those once Cam adds them to our Spotify list, which has got to be the strangest collection of music that exists out there.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
It is truly getting very weird.
What is one thing you can't leave an aid station without?
Recently it's been, man, like pickle juice or pickles, like all this. I mean, at World's End, I was like guzzling pickle juice. It was obscene. Now I'm going to make a plug real quick and I'll keep it brief. The secret ultra running food is kimchi. You guys know this?
No, please elaborate.
Tons of sodium, super sour. So it hits that Golgi tendon reflex that's in your mouth, which is what releases the muscles, which is what helps with cramping. Kimchi is delicious. It's fermented. So it's got all the probiotics and stuff that you need. And your gut's messed up anyway, because you're feeding it gels for 12 hours. It's like kimchi is this like perfect ultra running food. And I would love to see kimchi or kimchi liquid at more aid stations. But if they don't have that, pickles, pickle juice, maybe some pretzels, something like that.
You say that exactly one day after Alex Gold talks about how he doesn't understand how people can drink pickle juice at aid stations. It just goes to show, like our playlist, aid stations are weird places. And some people leave with a bag full of Oreos, and some people leave eating mashed potatoes and drinking beer. It's just truly the strangest, weirdest sport, and I do love it so much.
It is, man. It's an amazing sport. Yeah.
And so on the topic of weird, we already asked tonight what was the coolest or best thing you had found on a trail run, but what is the weirdest thing you've seen somebody eat during a race, or the strangest hallucination you've had mid-race? Essentially something like that.
I'll say the weirdest thing about hallucinations is like, I feel like I have them early. Like I feel like I have them at mile 20 and I just see people. I constantly see people or bears. I always think it's a person or a bear. And I just get totally freaked out. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a bear. Or, oh my God, there's a person there. And then I'm like, no, that's a log. And then like an hour later, it happens again. And I'm like, no, that's also just a log. So like, I mean, I didn't even hallucinate during Burning River. That was 30 hours. And I was up for 2 before that. So I was up for like 32, 33 hours. And I didn't really like hallucinate any worse than I do in like my normal runs. So maybe I'm just like prone to hallucinating. As far as food, I don't know, man. People eat all kinds of crazy stuff at these races. I haven't seen anything that crazy. I think kimchi is pretty crazy for some people, so I'll have to go with that.
It's always it's always nice when you've got the self-awareness to know that you're the weird one at the aid
Yeah.
station.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I just kind of eat, generic food and try to make sandwiches or something for myself. Um, but yeah, the more sour, the better. So I don't know, maybe somebody got, I would love to see some kind of super naturally sour food out there that would make its way into ultra running. I've heard of this product. Maybe you know about this saladitos. Have you heard of those? They're like pickled plums in a brine. I think it's like a Mexican food. And apparently they have like thousands of milligrams of sodium in them or something. So I got to go find them at some like Mexican grocery so I can try them. If anyone knows anything about them, send them my way.
Interesting. Next question we got here is, if you could run with one person in the history of the world, even if they aren't a runner, and they could, assuming that they could run with you, keep up with you, and for whatever distance or pace you want to do, who would that be?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll quickly give, actually, real quick, I hope it doesn't violate the rules. I have two answers. First one is actually my coach, Nicodemus. I've actually never met him. We've done remote coaching even before COVID. He is actually a Barkley finisher. He was the 13th Barkley finisher of all time. And I would just love to run with him, pick his brain, man. He's been an amazing coach. So shout out to Nicodemus. And also, we work through Complete Human Performance, which is my coaching group, and they're amazing. So shout out to both of them. But I would love to run with him and just pick his brain. And, I'm sure we would pick some super technical scramble and it would be amazing. And then the other guy is a guy named Ernest Shackleton. You guys ever heard of this guy before?
I've definitely heard the name, but I can't place it right now.
Yeah. So he's not a runner and he's dead, but you said anybody from any time and they'd keep up with me. So Ernest Shackleton was this guy that led a failed expedition to Antarctica and ended up keeping everybody alive. And it took like years, but they all basically got home safe and like lived on the ice for like months and years. And it was just this crazy feat. And the ship was called the Endurance. And so it's just like the perfect name. And they were just really hard people, like they were really tough individuals. And their captain, Shackleton, was a really tough individual. And like David Goggins, that's the kind of people that inspire me, and the people that I want to become is people who are tough. No matter how bad it is, the weather, the chafing, the blisters, the terrain, whatever's going wrong, you just persevere and move forward. And those are the kind of people I want to be around.
That's a good answer. And I think I just recently listened to a podcast about failed Arctic expeditions.
Yeah.
And it was deep in the recesses of the brain, because
that's probably where we heard it.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. But so this will be our final question for the night. And maybe we've already alluded to it a little bit here, but Samuel, what is your dream race?
Well, yeah, the easy answer is, of course, Barkley marathons. But I'll tell you what my dream goal is, and I'm a little hesitant to make it public, but what the hell, right? I want to set the FKT on the Sheltweet race. So the Sheltweet race is a 350-mile approximately trail that runs from Moorhead, Kentucky, all the way into Tennessee, into the Big South Fork recreation area. There is a current FKT. I think I can beat it with the right training. I mean, I've only ever run 100 miles. So, 350 just seems crazy, but I love that trail. I've run several ultras on portions of it: Warhammer, Rough Trail, Big Turtle 50 milers, all in the Sheltweet race. And I just, doing something like the AT or the PCT, that doesn't really appeal to me. Not really, just too big. And, I want something where I don't have to like sleep a lot and I can just push. I just want to push forever. And my goal is to, next year or the year after or whenever I can set the FKT on that approximately 350-mile trail. So it's not a race, but that's my dream goal. Yeah.
That's such a great goal. And I want to remind everybody, if you do have a ridiculous goal, like, let's stop being so afraid to put those out there. Because I may have said myself on like the very third episode of this show that in about 5 to 10 years, I do plan on winning the Hard Rock 100. That seems like it's way a far ways out of here. But like, that's the goal, right? And truly, the way the lottery's set up, I don't even know if I'll get even a slight chance to run Hard Rock in 5 to 10 years. But as of now, what I'm saying is that I'm going to win it sometime later, because that's the goal.
I love that, Cam. I mean, you should always pick hard goals. You should have a lot of goals. You should pick goals that like you're pretty sure you can do. You should pick goals you're not sure, and then you should pick goals that like you're never going to hit. I mean, when I was a bike racer, I thought I was going to be in the Tour de France one day. Well, that's not happening. But I still rode bikes a lot and became a better bike racer. And I mean, it's the only way we get better is by picking, goals all over the place and just trying to do them and trying to reach them. And that's how we become better athletes and better people.
Very true. So as we're wrapped up here, I want to say thanks for joining us this evening. I want to say thanks to all of our awesome viewers in the chat room asking questions all night tonight. For our listeners who want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably Instagram's the best place. It's Sam_medal. So SAM_METAL. My old nickname from my medal days, Sam Medal. And I put up all my exploits and stuff on there. And I'm about to release the Barkley Fall Classic race report with some awesome photos that the photographers took. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll be posting that on Instagram very soon. And I just want to give one more shout out to my coaching company, Complete Human Performance. You can follow them on Instagram too, Complete Human Performance. They've been amazing. And my coach, Nicodemus, is awesome and has gotten me prepped for these races far beyond, what I ever thought was my abilities were capable of. So really, really happy to be working with them.
Awesome. As always, we'll put those links in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching this evening, and we will see you next week.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been a blast, and love the podcast. Very honored to be on it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
See y'all later.
Take care.